Dziękuję, Pana Agata, which is the extent of my Polish, so don't try me on any other. It is not often that one can honestly introduce someone with the words, "and now someone who needs no introduction." Professor Emeritus Michael R. Marrus has long been one of the leading Jewish historians of his generation, particularly in the field of Holocaust studies. His award-winning book, Lessons of the Holocaust, represents the culmination of decades of reflection on the subject. More than just a work of historical inquiry, parsing facts and determining what happened when, Lessons of the Holocaust is a meditation on how the Holocaust is and should be remembered. Examining how the Holocaust has been understood through various lenses, public and private, professional and personal, global and sectarian, Marrus asks us to challenge our search for clear-cut answers to the metaphysical meaning of this horrific event in both Jewish and human history, and to accept both its incomprehensibility and its myriad interpretative possibilities. In his opinion, the search for lessons of the Holocaust is ultimately an exercise in frustration, either because there are no lessons to be learned or because there are too many. More than anything else, his book gives us pause and causes us to view his subject matter with new eyes, in this manner advancing our understanding of that which cannot be understood. It is my great honor and pleasure to invite Professor Marrus to the podium to accept his well-deserved Canadian Jewish Literary Award in the category of history. Professor Marrus.
Thank you so much for that generous introduction. Let me begin with my thanks to all of those who have been responsible for sustaining this Canadian Jewish Literary Award in its many manifestations. Before, it was never entirely clear whether this award would have a solid footing, as indeed it should, in a Jewish community as vigorous and as important as that of ours. But I'm so grateful that people have come forward to sustain the award, both financially and also intellectually and institutionally. And in that latter respect, let me salute, as someone from the University of Toronto, let me salute my colleagues at York University for taking on the institutional responsibility. The platform that you have provided is just what the awards need for continued presence here in our community, along with prayer and working out and education and so forth. So thank you all. Let me add a word about the person in whose name these awards are being dedicated this year, and that is Adam Furstenberg. I knew Adam Furstenberg, though not well, but I certainly spoke with him many, many times about projects of Jewish cultural interest and importance, especially the Jewish Literary Awards in previous manifestations. So those of you who have chosen to honor Adam Furstenberg's memory in this way, I think have done very well indeed. And finally, let me say how moved and touched I am to be together with my colleagues. Anna Agata Tuczynska is the only one I know well, and I am honored to be here alongside of her with these awards. But as I listened to everything that was said about my colleagues, I really feel that special honor that you have accorded to me. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I did not know that reading from my book might have been a part of these events. Indeed, there's a lot that I didn't know, but having begun by hearing all of you, I think I can do well by taking just a little bit of time to say something about what my book is about. I don't have a whole lot to say. I filled about half of this little sheet of paper as I was listening to your very lucid accounts of your own works. I think I may fairly say that my book has three themes, although I didn't start by thinking that I would enumerate them and place them in this fashion. But I have three themes in my book. The first is autobiographical, and the second is historiographical, and the third has to do very specifically with lessons. I'll be very brief in saying just a few words about each of these. Let me begin with the autobiographical focus. I have been involved in the teaching of history at the University of Toronto and at UCLA and at the University of Cape Town, South Africa, and involved at universities in Europe and in Israel and in North America, now for some 30 years, and I am at the stage of my career when I think many of us ask ourselves, what have we been doing? What have we been doing? Well, I have been a historian, and I have been a historian of various subjects, but in particular, the history of the Holocaust. And so I have a lot to say about the history of the Holocaust, not so much because I want to promote the things that I've done, but because I have lived through, in my own career, an astonishing growth and transformation of Holocaust studies. This is one of the important themes, I think, that any Holocaust historian must acknowledge. Don't have time to go into it here, but let me just say that the development of Holocaust studies from virtually a total absence at the time when I was a student to maturation now in 2016 has been extraordinary. It's an extraordinary story. And it is a story that, as it happened through the luck of my own chronology, I have lived through. And so part of my book tells how I experienced this transformation. And there are two things I would mention about this in the content of the book. The first is that I had never really written a book with this personal focus before. And one of the great things about it is that immediately I decided, guess what? I can dispense with footnotes. There are no footnotes in this book, ladies and gentlemen. And for a professional historian, I think this is, well, I thought it was remarkable. Much more important, however, that's for me, but for you, I think you should know this, that like many writers, I'm so glad that these awards are the Canadian Jewish Literary Awards. They're literary awards. It's about literature. Let me just say one word about literature. We write mostly for ourselves. We write for ourselves. Yes, we want an audience. Yes, we want good reviews. Yes, we want acknowledgement. And when the acknowledgement is an award, we are so happy and grateful. But you know, these things will take care of themselves. The one thing that is crucial is that we be satisfied with our work. And in that sense, I feel, frankly, that I've got this off my chest, this book of mine. I'm glad that some of you will read it. I'd be even more glad if you appreciate it. But at the end of the day, I've done it. I've done it. I've said what I have to say, and I feel reasonably comfortable with it. Otherwise, well, I would have had another go at the editorial process. Anyway, that's the autobiographical part. Secondly, there is what we call in the history business the historiographical part. What do I mean by that? I mean, how do historians interpret history? How do they understand history? And in my case, the history of the Holocaust. In an earlier book called The Holocaust in History, I tried to explain how the destruction of European Jewry has entered into the historiographical world, has entered into the world of history writing. It was absent when I was in university, beginning at the end of the 1950s, and now it is here. What does this mean? Among other things, it means that it has been interpreted by colleagues around the world. It's a global enterprise. We meet together, we write for each other, we dispute in journals, we disagree often, but we disagree in the way that historians always disagree, and that is based on evidence and research and questioning and discussion with others. So, how lucky I have been to be part of that world, and that's something that I describe. Please do not be upset when you find historians of the Holocaust or students who are not historians but who study, let's say, cinema or art or literature on the Holocaust when they disagree with each other. Historians, art historians, literature people, and those who do work in other disciplines do disagree, but they advance together trying to expand our knowledge. And I think in the case of the history and other ways of studying the Holocaust, they've done this extraordinarily well. So that's historiography. But finally, there is a problematic issue. And I offer here my own, frankly, personal take on what I fear has become almost a cliche. And that is that there are explicit, easily defined lessons of the Holocaust, lessons that we all should absorb and repeat on public occasions and on monuments and in museums, lessons of the Holocaust. Now, this is a complex subject. I have only a minute or so to explain what I mean. I do not mean that one cannot learn from the Holocaust. I try to explain in my book how we learn and what we learn and how our lives are deepened and enriched by a study of a catastrophe such as the Holocaust. But you know what happens when you put into Google lessons of the Holocaust? Let me tell you how many hits you get. Something like 9 million hits. I'm afraid that that phrase has become something of a cliche. And it turns out that if one tries to understand and explore just what are these lessons of the Holocaust, guess what? There are left-wing lessons and right-wing lessons. There are Israeli lessons and there are French lessons. And there are Bulgarian lessons and there are Toronto lessons. This is a very complex subject, but not really so very different from other historical episodes. Is there a lesson of the Russian Revolution? A lesson of the French Revolution? These are big subjects, and if one approaches this subject with a critical edge, as I try to do, that's what they pay me for at the University of Toronto, or what they used to pay. I'm now retired. Taking that critical approach is the way understanding is enlarged and explored, and the way we do full justice, I think, or fuller justice than we do now, than to adapt the Holocaust to our present day perspectives and goals and politics. So I hope you sense with me that this is a complex subject. It's a subject that my colleagues and I will continue to debate, and that is a sign of health. It is a sign that the exploration of the Holocaust will continue. It is continuing, and it is, my final point, it is being done by a new generation of scholars. I've trained PhD students who are now out there with jobs and in their own world and working away and writing their own books. One day they will, if they have not already, they will certainly say, you know, Marrus, he was okay, but we are going further. We're going to ask different questions. We're going to explore a different body of evidence and come up with different answers. So it should be. So it should be that our understanding is transformed as we devote more and more attention over the years to this subject, which is now so much a part of our culture as it was never before. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for hearing me out.